soft study, ASMR. Now relax and let's begin. Correlational research looks at whether two variables are related. The researcher does not change anything. They measure both variables and see whether they move together. For example, a researcher might measure how many hours people sleep and how stressed they feel. If people who sleep more usually report less stress, the two variables are related. This would be a negative correlation because one variable goes up while the other goes down. A positive correlation means both variables move in the same direction. For example, as study time increases, test scores may also increase. A negative correlation means the variables move in opposite directions. For example, as stress increases, sleep may decrease. The most important rule is correlation does not prove causation. Just because two variables are related does not mean one caused the other. There are two main reasons. The first is directionality. Directionality means we may not know which variable came first. For example, poor sleep may increase stress, but stress may also make it harder to sleep. The second reason is a third variable. A third variable is another factor that may affect both variables. For example, work pressure may cause both poor sleep and high stress. This means sleep and stress may be related without one directly causing the other. Now let us look at survey research. Survey research collects information by asking people questions. This is usually done with questionnaires, rating scales, or online forms. For example, a researcher may ask people how many hours they sleep and ask them to rate their stress from 0 to 10. Surveys are useful because they can collect information from many people quickly. They are often cheaper and easier than interviews or experiments. But surveys also have limitations. People may forget information. They may misunderstand a question. They may give an answer that sounds better instead of being completely honest. This is called social desirability. For example, a person may report exercising more than they really do because they want to appear healthy. Another problem is self-selection bias. Self-selection bias happens when the people who choose to take part are different from the people who do not. For example, people who feel strongly about mental health may be more likely to complete a mental health survey. This means the results may not represent everyone. A survey is a way of collecting data. It can be used in different types of studies. For example, a survey can be used in a correlational study to see whether sleep and stress are related. Now let us look at observational research. Observational research means watching and recording behavior. The researcher observes what people do instead of asking them to describe it. For example, a researcher may watch children in a playground and record how often they share toys. There are two common types of observation. Naturalistic observation happens in a normal, real-life setting. For example, watching children in their usual playground. Structured observation happens in a planned situation. For example, bringing children into a room, giving them the same toys, and recording how they behave. The strength of observational research is that it records actual behavior. But observational research also has limitations. Observer bias happens when the researcher's expectations affect what they notice or record. Reactivity happens when people change their behavior because they know they are being watched. For example, children may behave more politely while a researcher is in the room. Observational studies usually have limited control over other factors. Because of this, they usually cannot prove cause and effect. Here is an exam-style question. A researcher measures social media use and anxiety and finds that people who use more social media report more anxiety. What type of study is this? It is correlational research because both variables were measured and nothing was changed. Can the researcher say that social media causes anxiety? No. The result shows a relationship, but anxiety might increase social media use, or a third variable might affect both. Here is another exam-style question. A researcher watches customers in a supermarket and records whether they read nutrition labels. What type of research is this? It is observational research because the researcher watches and records behavior. Final recap. Correlational research measures whether two variables are related. It does not prove causation. Survey research asks people questions to collect self-reported information. Observational research watches and records actual behavior. Remember, measure a relationship equals correlational research. Ask questions equals survey research. Watch behavior equals observational research. Now relax, and I will see you in the next lesson.